Okay, welcome again to our reading of Acts of the Apostles, and we're up to chapter 14. And so this begins with the preaching of Barnabas and Paul at Iconium, and they're forced to flee. So we had a nice egeneto, it came to pass, so it happened. In Ikonion, katato auto is an odd phrase. It can either mean together, possibly in the same manner. It is used in the Septuagint, but it's a fairly rare phrase in the New Testament. So it came to pass in Ikonion, perhaps in the same manner, that they, that is Paul and Barnabas, elthane, they entered into the synagogue of the Jews. So the infinitive here is after the egeneto. It came to pass that they entered in to the synagogue of the Jews. And again another infinitive after this egeneto. It came to pass that they spoke hutos hosti, thus as, or thus so that. So they spoke in such a way that, and it takes an infinitive after hosti, that polupletos, a great multitude of the Jews and the Greeks, pistuosai, aorist infinitive from pistuo, believed. Hoi de ape thesantes. Now, but the Jews, this is a interesting use here. It's literally they were disobedient. So the ones who were disobedient, it's a bit stronger than unbelieving. So they weren't just unbelieving, but they actually were disobedient. They were going to do something unpleasant. So the Jews, those that were disobedient, ep egeran, this is from epi plus egero, to raise. So they rose up against them, and ekakosantas psukas. This again is quite idiomatic here. The verb is kakoo, which normally, this is not the usual meaning that we get for kakoo. In classical Greek it means to ill-treat somebody. But the phrase kakosai tas psukes, which is found twice in the Septuagint, but there it refers to affliction placed on one's own soul by a fast or a vow. We saw it earlier in Acts 12, meaning to do harm, this verb kakoo. Here it has the sense of poisoned their minds, literally made their minds evil. Made the minds evil. So poisoned the minds of the Gentiles, the ethnon. Ethnos simply means race here, but it's often used in the sense of the Gentiles, the non-Jews. So they poisoned the minds of the Gentiles against the brothers, against the brethren, in the more general sense here. Hikanon men nice particles here, and in fact this whole section is quite literary in many in its usage of Greek. So therefore, dietripsan from diatribo. Diatribo is just to spend time. So they spent hikonos means sufficient normally in New Testament Greek, but Luke uses it in the sense of a lot of time. So they therefore spent a lot of time parasiamenoi, speaking boldly, epi to kurio, in the Lord. And in apposition to this dative, we're going to get several datives here. We get one dative participles here, one there and one there. So speaking boldly in the Lord who bore witness, well, if we take the epi, to the word of his grace, and who, it's by giving, so it's dative participle from didomi, agreeing with the curio. So he bore witness by giving signs and wonders, or perhaps allowing signs and wonders, genesthai, to take place, dia turn keron auton, through their hands. So it's quite good literary Greek here with use of participles. So speaking boldly in the Lord, who gave witness by the word of his grace, and by granting that signs and wonders to take place through through their hands, that is, the hands of Paul and Barnabas. The subject here is toplerthos, the multitude of the city, eskisthe, aorist passive from skizdo, was divided. Again, we get good literary use here. We get a nice hoi men and a hoi de, which is good classical Greek. So some, and some were with the Jews, and some were with the apostles. And when a horme, which is an onset or surge, so when there was an attack of the Gentiles and of the Jews, so when that egenetot took place, along with the rulers, this is a dative plural participle here from archo, to rule, taken here as a noun, so from archon, the rulers, that's their rulers. So when an attack took place of the Gentiles and the Jews along with their rulers, hubrisai. Now, hubrisdo is a very, very strong word. It often just is translated to maltreat, but it is a technical, certainly in 5th century Athens, this was a technical term to assault somebody. It's not just to act rudely. Hubris is arrogance or rudeness and so on, but this particular verb is very strong. It has the physical sense to assault somebody, as we know from the law court speeches of the 5th and 4th centuries. So to attack them and to throw stones at them, so to stone them. Sun idontes, this is from sun horao, aorist participle. Here it has the sense of to become aware of it. So having realised what was going on, they fled from katafugo. They're a strong aorist here. They fled into the cities of Lycaonia, i.e. Lystra and Derbe, and the surrounding area. Kake for kai eke, you get crassus there, and there they were proclaiming the good news. So this is a periphrastic perfect here, because the verb is middle, and so they put it into a participle and they're using the verb to be. So they proclaimed the good news there also. Now we have another miracle here. There are a lot of parallels between this story and the story of Peter back in chapter 3 of Acts. And we see lots of comparisons both in the particular miracle itself and the language used between this and you might like to compare it back with chapter 3. And a certain man, now we get an idiom here, adunatos tais posin. Posin is the dative plural from pous podos, foot, and so adunatos means he had no power in his feet, that is, he was lame. So a certain man, lame in his feet, in Lystra, ekatheto, was sitting there. And he was kolos, he was lame, ek koilias. The koilia is the womb of his mother, who depoti, who had never peripatesin from peripatio. It's a contracted epsilon verb. There's the augment here to tell us it's past tense. So who had, and this is the aorist form, who had never walked. Peripatio is literally to walk around, but it just becomes the word for walking. We get the word peripatetic in English from this one. This man, hutos, akusen from akuo, and again it's good literary Greek. It takes a genitive of person, which is what we have here. Doesn't always do that in New Testament Greek, but Luke's Greek is slightly better than some other writers. And he heard Paul speaking. Genitive participle from lalio, agreeing with Paulos here, with Paulu. And hos, who, well, we just say he, and this is referring to Paul. Atanisdo is to stare at somebody. It's to look them in the eye, basically. It's not just to sort of glance at them, but to look carefully at them. So he, looking attentively at him, and having seen, aorist participle, that he has faith, 2 plus the infinitive for purpose, so as to be saved. This is the aorist passive infinitive from sozo. Now, sozo can mean to be saved in many different senses, and it can be used to be made well, to be restored to health, which is probably the sense of it here. So having seen that he had the faith so as to be made well, so as to be saved, he spoke with a great voice, that instrumental use of the dative here. He said in a great voice, understand inverted commas, anastathi, arise, or literally, or stand up, probably is more literal here. Anastami is to rise, but literally to stand up, which is probably better here. So stand up on your feet. Orthos, straight. Kai helato. Now that verb, that is an aorist middle from the verb halamai. So if you're looking this one up, that's the verb halamai, and that's the aorist form there. You lose one of the lambdas in the aorist. The stem of this is hal. It's cognate with Latin salto, I think, to dance. So it means to leap. Halamai. So this is the aorist middle. And he leapt, and this is the imperfect now from peripatio. There's the epsilon, tell us it's past tense, and we get contracts to a. Probably inceptive here, he began to walk around. And the crowds, having seen, hot for tuto hot, the thing which Greek often will leave out the something like tuto, this thing, and just use the relative pronoun here. So the crowds, having seen what, literally that which Paul did, ep eran from ep iro, they raised up their voices. Lykaonisti. Now this ending here tells me that this is a language. It's in the Lycaonian language. Now if they spoke in this language, whatever it was, then of course Paul and Barnabas would not have understood what they were saying. So they spoke in this Lycaonistic language, legontes, saying, the gods homoi othentes. Now this is an aorist passive participle from homoi o'o, having made themselves like to, takes a dative. So the gods, having made themselves like to men, so the gods in the likeness of men, kat ebesan from katabino, have come down pros hemas to us. And we get a nice tet connective here, which is interesting for and we get a tet there and a det here, which is interesting. You would expect better to have a men and a de, but Luke interestingly here uses the particle tet. So, and they were calling Barnabas, they were calling him Dia. Now Dia is the accusative from Zeus. Zeus is, of course, the god Zeus. This is the accusative. So the accusative is dia, the genitive is dios. And various different datives, you get de, or you sometimes get zani, various other ones. So this is the accusative and the genitive. Dia from Zeus. So they were calling Barnabas Zeus, but they were calling, understood, Paul Hermes. Now this is interesting here that they would do that. So they're thinking these are two gods, Zeus and Hermes, that have come down to earth. Now they called him Hermes since autos, he was the one literally leading the word. So he was the chief speaker. In Iamblichus, Hermes was described as being the leader of words, so the chief speaker. And of course in later Neoplatonic theology, Hermes becomes a very central character in terms of Hermes was seen as the one who leads the souls down into Hades. And of course also in earlier Greek, Hermes was the messenger of the gods and hence brought messages. That's probably more the sense here, that Hermes speaks on behalf of the gods. And that's why they called Paul Hermes, because he was the one that did all the talking. We get another tet here, and the priest of, now there's the genitive I mentioned before, there's the genitive, the dia, accusative, dios, genitive. So the priest of Zeus, and in opposition to that we get two ontos. Now this is, well, it's interesting here. I mean, Zeus would have had many priests, so the sense of this might be the priest of, understand, the temple of Zeus, the one which was here, the one existing in front of the city. So this priest, our participle is down here, enenkas. This is the aorist participle from Pharaoh, and then you get einenkon, which is actually a strong verb, and here we're getting a weak aorist participle formed from that einenk. You shorten the a back to an e because it's now a participle, and you get enenk is the root. So the one having gathered taurus, bulls, and stemmata, now these are wreaths, at the pulonas, at the gates, along with the crowds, athelen from Thello, he wanted Thuane to make a sacrifice. And the apostles, having heard, the apostles Barnabas and Paul, having heard, dia rexantes, this is from dia regnumi. So the verb, if you're looking this up, is dia, well, they often double the row, regnumi is the verb here. Ragnumi is to tear. We get our word rag, we get our word wreck, all from this particular root. So having torn their garments, ex epedesan, this is from ek plus pedao, is to leap. So they leapt up, they jumped up among the crowd, crying out and saying, Men, titauta poiete, why are you doing these things? So question. Kai hemas homoia pathes esmin. So esmin is we are, it's the first person plural. Homopathes means with the same nature, and it takes a dative. You'll see it also in James 5:17. It's fairly rare, and it looks like we're getting a sort of quotation here, which is probably from the Psalms, but it's not a direct quotation. So we are of the same nature with you, human beings. So we are human beings of the same nature with you, proclaiming good news to for you, epistrephane, to turn back, apot two-tone tone mation, literally from these vain things. Now in the Septuagint, ta matia is frequently used of false gods, which is probably what it is here, but it's literally vain things, so perhaps false gods, to the living God, who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all the things in them. And he, now this is a perfect participle here, a perfect middle participle. So if you're looking this one up, this comes from para. You can see the oi there, so undo the augment, and you get paroikomai. Oikomai is another word for going, and para, sort of passing by, and this is the perfect middle dative plural feminine participle from this verb, because genea is the noun here, which is a first declension alpha pure noun. Genea, it's feminine, so we get the feminine participle in the plural. So who in foregoing generations, asan is the from eao, to allow. So eao, to allow. So in previous generations, he allowed all the Gentiles, poroes there, to go on their way. So in other words, to go on their own way, to do whatever they liked. Now we get another lovely particle here, kaitoi. It means although, almost nevertheless. So although, the main verb is here, uk afaken, he did not leave auton for heauton, himself. Now this unfortunately often happens even in classical Greek. Sometimes you get auton for heauton. So he did not leave himself marturon, without witness. He did not leave himself as someone without any witness, and he didn't do that in the positive sense. He didn't do that because he did agathorgon, doing good things. That's that ergon root in here. So by doing good works, however, he did not leave himself without witness. Didus, giving humin to you, huetos, rain, hurenothen. Now this is urenos, plus you get this old then ending, which is an old ablative, very common in much earlier Greek. This is very literary, this passage. It's got a lot of literary words. We get this is a poetic word, really. We're going to get another one down here, karpophoros, a good literary word. Agathorgon is a good literary word. So this passage here is rather nicely put together in terms of Greek language. We see this kaitoi and so on. So doing good works, giving to you rain from heaven, and seasons which bear fruit. For root like pharaoh, carrying or bearing fruit. Epipiplone. Now this is empiplone. This is from piplao, which is a later form from empimplame. Sorry, this is there's a mu in there. Empiplone. This is from empimplame. That's the older word, and it's been modernized, it's been simplified. So this is the older word here, empimplame, and it's been modernized into piplao, with the mu gone, the nasal infix here gone. We get piplao. Empiplao, to fill. And it takes a genitive, so filling you with trophes, with food, and understand filling your hearts with happiness. So very literary phrase here. So having given rain to you from heaven, and seasons which bear fruit, filling understand you with food, with nourishment, and filling your hearts with this funny use of the genitive here, happiness. And having said these things, with difficulty, kat epausan, he caused to cease the crowd. So he caused the crowds to cease, kat epau, from top me thuane, caused them to cease, literally so as not to sacrifice our toys to them, so as not to make a sacrifice to them. And I might finish at that point, and we'll finish it off in another video.